Well, hello everybody out there in Atlanta. This is Chris from HLegacy.com with another exciting episode of Topher's Like. We're back back inside the Agents of Legacy studios, as it were, to continue our talks about Halloween Horror Nights. Of course, this is the year of Halloween Horror Nights 30. Hopefully, we'll see how that goes. So I thought today it'd be fun. Instead of sort of delving into speculation for the year, we'll continue on and talk a little bit about the history, the funness that has come before for Halloween Horror Nights. So today I want to talk a little bit about the franchises of Halloween Horror Nights. And I'm not talking about the IP stuff. We're going to talk about their original franchises and which ones I like the most and which ones, what are the small ones, what are the sequels, what are the big ones, what are the big daddies, the ones that I think that people, and myself included, really enjoy and like to see them come back over and over again. Because let's face it, baby, these days,
you gotta have a sequel.
Thank you, Stu. So what I kind of did here was I sort of separated everything into different categories. I have the sort of the mini franchises, the houses that had sequels and might have franchise potential, and then of course the big ones, the big franchises that have had multiple sequels and have been with us and have left a really big impact on the event and continue to have a really big impact on the event. And in fact, some of these we've seen, sequels in recent memory. So let's talk a little bit about the ones that, like the smaller ones, the things that have sequels, but I think have franchise potential. I think one of the bigger ones that's come up in recent memory is probably Ghost Town. Ghost Town, of course, was first back in 2004, and then we had a sequel in 2016, Ghost Town: The Curse of Lightning Gulch, of course. I think that, this one, especially with the success of Lightning Gulch, I think Ghost Town kind of has the potential to sort of, come back in bigger and better forms. I think this one's kind of primed to come back, because it's a good premise. It's it's the Wild West, it's ghosts, it's a fun premise, and I think Lightning Gulch did a really good job of sort of reintroducing the franchise, but also sort of doing its own thing with the franchise. Dead Exposure Patient Zero, of course, as part of the Dead Exposure franchise. Dead Exposure first showed up in 2008. Maybe not a direct lift of the first one, but sort of carries on the name of Dead Exposure. And I mean, kind of bad timing considering where we are this year in terms of the pandemic, but Dead Exposure Patient Zero. So that was a thing. You have other ones too, like Nightingales, of course, also came back. That one, people have, since the first Nightingales, they've sort of speculated that the Nightingales can be a franchise, and people have wanted Nightingales to come back to the event for quite some time, and they finally got that in 2019. Of course, we were in the gladiatorial Roman times, of course, which, the Nightingales kind of lend itself, the creatures themselves lend itself to sort of, traversing these things throughout history, which a lot of fans, speculated for a long time. The Nightingales could come back at any moment and, just kind of be plucked into different moments in history. The Nightingales themselves are such fan favorites that I wouldn't be surprised, if Nightingales sort of, became a bigger thing. Those are the three that I think really can come back and sort of be their own franchises moving forward. I think Ghost Town, Dead Exposure, Nightingales have a lot of potential for them to continue on with those legacies. There's other ones like Vampire. If you've seen my least favorite houses list from last year, that Vampire Bloodbath is one of my least favorite houses of all time on Halloween Horror Nights. Castle Vampire, of course, was the first one. So, I don't think that, I think we're kind of over that. I think that if we're going to do vampires moving forward, wouldn't surprise me if they stick to Dracula, stuff like that. Havoc was another one that I had on here. Of course, we had Havoc Derailed, back in, was it 2013, 2012, somewhere around there? 2013. We had Havoc Derailed. I kind of enjoy Havoc Derailed. I'm not as big of a fan of the original house that some people are. I did kind of dig Havoc Derailed and what they sort of did there. I like the vibe on the train. I know a lot of people hate Havoc Derailed, but like I kind of dug the gimmick of being on the train. I thought it did a good job in that aspect. I'm not quite so sure that Havoc, it wouldn't surprise me to see the Havoc show up in some way, shape, or form possibly, but in the future. But I think that the other three, like I said, have much more potential to come back. They have much more fan impact, I think, than like Havoc or Saws and Steam. I think I love Saws and Steam Into the Machine. It's one of my favorite houses of all time at Horror Nights. And that's pretty much it. Those are like the small ones, the ones that have sequels to them, but they don't have like these huge franchises behind them. But I could see like Ghost Town and Dead Exposure and Nightingale sort of sticking around and coming back in full force and sort of becoming one of these bigger franchises in the future. So that's those. The next category that I sort of came up with is sort of the mini category. These are ones that I think have big enough names but don't have as many like iterations in their houses. And that's All Night Die-In, Run, and the Scream House franchise. These three all have something in common, and it's that they all follow or have something to do with icons. Run, of course, originally was meant to be a house for Eddie, showcasing him as the icon in 2001. We had Run Hostile Territory, of course, and then we also had Run Blood, Sweat, and Fears. All Night Die-In has had two house iterations, and then also we had the Scare Zone. Back in 2015. And Scream House, of course, follows The Caretaker and Cindy and, so on and so forth. I think these, moving forward, I think these are kind of the ones that are like in their back pocket because they involve icons. You bust out a Scream House, that The Caretaker is going to be there. You bust out a Run, it's probably going to be Eddie. Although Eddie kind of wasn't featured in Blood, Sweat, and Fears, it was kind of a amalgamation of Hellgate Prison and also Run. So that kind of that's a thing. But Run originally was meant as a house for Eddie. So that's where I'm sort of justifying my feelings there. Like all three of these kind of involving icons. Of course, All Night Die-In involves the director. These have the potential, they're sort of, in their back pocket to pull out anytime, hey, you want to feature the director? Here's All Night Die-In, or, you want to feature Caretaker? Here's Scream House. So those are those. And then of course you've got the big ones, the big franchises that have multiple iterations, that really have transcended their fandom. My personal favorite, this is where we get into my favorites. My personal favorite here is Scary Tales, of course. Scary Tales has had an abundance of houses and representation on Halloween Horror Nights. I love the sort of twisted brand on fairy tales. I think that concept works very well, and I think Scary Tales sort of embodies that very well. I think they do a good job with that. You've got the granddaddy, of course, which is Dungeon of Terror. The original Haunted House of Halloween Horror Nights. That's come back in a couple different iterations, and also come back as just bringing the house back in the early days of Horror Nights. That's kind of like the classic one. And they're like I said, there have been IP franchises, but we're not going to talk about, because if we want to talk about that, like we go back to the beginning, you have People Under the Stairs, and you have Psycho, and you have Norman Bates and stuff like that. Like that's also kind of a franchise, but those are kind of IPs, so we'll kind of keep those on the down low for now. But Scary Tales, Psycho Scarapy, of course. Psycho Scarapy has had multiple iterations of, and even we talked about the mini ones dealing with icons. Psycho Scarapy has of course dipped into the toe of Jack the Clown because it involves Shady Brook. Body Collectors, of course, most recently back in 2015, which also combined the Shady Brook Asylum with the Body Collectors, which was pretty cool. My favorite iteration of this is probably the Body Collectors house from 2008. I think that one is kind of cool because it sort of riffs on the Jack the Ripper stuff. I thought that worked very well. But yeah, so Horror Nights is, they like their franchises. They like to, to bring out their familiar characters and reuse them over and over again. I know there's some pushback with something like Scary Tales. I think Scary Tales these days, because it's been used so many times, what can they possibly do? Scary Tales, has not only just had a bunch of different houses, but they've also had the Scare Zone in 2015 as well. Fairy Tales back in 2018, I thought was fantastic. I just love the Scary Tales brand. I think the Scary Tales brand is one that's going to be with us for a long time because it's easy. It's just you take fairy tales and you sort of make them evil and twist them and do whatever. I just think it works very well. The body collectors, I like the body collectors. I would probably take those over Psychoscarapy. Psychoscarapy houses have never really grab me like they have for some people. I like I think my favorite one is probably Home for the Holidays. I thought because it was kind of, it took it out of the asylum and sort of put it into this suburban nightmare where the bus crashes and these things are running amok. Also sort of played upon in 2015 with the Psychoscarapy scare zone there. The Shady Brook Asylum the Shady Brook Asylum scare zone back in 2015. So they kind of they've taken that idea a couple times. Dungeon of Terror, I never experienced the original Dungeon of Terror. My only gauge on Dungeon of Terror is the one from 2006 with the storyteller. It is what it is. But that's the granddaddy. That's the classic. It was the first haunted house. It was the one that started it all. So I'm actually surprised that we hadn't or have not seen Dungeon of Terror come back in more recent years. Obviously the last time that we saw it was back in 2006. So I think Dungeon of Terror is kind of ripe to come back at any moment. Maybe. But, so there's that. But yeah, so I just wanted to ramble, as I normally do, about the Horror Nights franchises. Horror Nights, like I said, they have their own brands, their own franchises that they really like to use. The phenomenon, Scary Tales, Dungeon of Terror, of course, was the original one, but I think it really sort of took off with Scary Tales. So franchises at Halloween Horror Nights. Which ones are your favorite? Which ones do you like the best? Are you a Scary Tales person like I am? Are you clamoring for that Saws and Steam reboot that we haven't seen in a long time? Or are you a fan of the franchises that involve the icons like Scream House, Run, and All Night Die-In? I've said in the past, icons are kind of a throwaway thing for me. I don't really care either way if icons are used. So the houses, especially because icon houses tend to not be that good. Scream House, I think the original Scream House, I think was a good one. But the sequels kind of never really captured that for me, the feeling of the first one. All Night Die-In, I love the director and I love the whole movie vibe of everything like that, but it is what it is. And Run, I really liked Blood, Sweat, and Fears, but that's kind of it. The other two are kind of, swept under the rug for me. But what are yours? Like I said, are you clamoring for that Saws and Steam? Do you really want to bring back that vampire franchise? Are you clamoring for another vampire iteration there? Or are you just a fan of Scary Tales? You like the Scary Tales brand? Because there's a lot. There's a lot of the franchises that they really utilize. There's a lot of them. So Scary Tales, Psychoscarapy, Body Collectors, those ones they use a lot. So, and I think like in the case of Body Collectors, it's because of the characters. Psychoscarapy, it's because of Shady Brook. And I think Scary Tales, it's just easy. It's just an easy, grab a couple fairy tales and put haunted twists on them, and you've got yourself a good house. So, it is what it is. But anyway, that's going to be it for me. Who knows what we'll talk about next week. I'm going to get out of here. So Horror Nights franchises again. Which ones are your favorite? Do you want to see some of them come back? Let me know. Share it, talk it, and all that other good jazz. Until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.